With finger on the trigger, she asked for his last words. But his smirk, and safety's on reply, wasn't the final confrontation. The true climax erupts at Cygnus Outpost as Commander Vex corners our fugitives. Just when capture seems inevitable, Nurella's transformation reaches its peak, her body, emanating blue energy that forms a protective dome, allowing their desperate escape while the station explodes around them. Finger on the trigger, she said. Any last words, human? Yeah, he smirked. Safety's on. The neon lights of Nexus Prime cut through the perpetual night, like electric veins in a vast, cybernetic organism. Skyscrapers reached impossible heights, their tips disappearing into the smog-choked atmosphere, while flying vehicles buzzed between them like luminescent insects, their navigation lights blinking red and blue against the darkness. In the heart of the city's entertainment district, the cosmic drift bar pulsed with the rhythms of a dozen different species' music preferences. The establishment, carved into the side of what was once an asteroid mining facility, had seen its fair share of illegal dealings and double crosses over the decades. Tonight would be no different. Jack Evans stood at the curved obsidian bar, his tall, muscular frame drawing little attention in a room full of exotic aliens and enhanced humans. His copper-red hair caught the light with metallic highlights, a genetic modification he'd splurged on years ago, a tumbler of amber liquid real earth whiskey. Not the synthetic stuff sat, half-empty before him. Anything else I can get you, Jack? Thorn, the Vexian bartender, slid over. His translucent skin revealed the shadow of vital organs working beneath, a physiological trait that made his species excellent poker players, but terrible liars. Just information, Jack replied, sliding a credit chip across the counter. Word is, you've got a line on high-paying transport work. Thorn's inner membranes fluttered, the Vexian equivalent of a thoughtful frown. There's a package needs moving off-world. Discreet. No questions. Triple the going rate. Jack raised an eyebrow. Triple means triple the trouble. Or triple the opportunity, Thorn countered, four-fingered hand sliding the credit chip back. You're the best smuggler this side of the Rigel corridor. They specifically asked for you. That was enough to set off warning bells in Jack's mind. But curiosity, and the promise of enough credits to upgrade his ship's quantum drive, won out. When and where? Docking Bay 94. 1 hour. Look for a blue case, don't be late. Jack nodded, finishing his drink in one swift motion. As he turned to leave, his eyes caught the reflection of a commotion in the corner of the bar. A hulking, Krell nearly 7 feet of muscle, scales, and bad attitude had a slender, green-skinned woman backed against the wall. Jack sighed. He had a job to prepare for, a schedule to keep. Getting involved in other people's problems was precisely the kind of complication he avoided. It was his personal code. Stay focused, mind your business, and always keep the safety on until you're ready to pull the trigger. But something about the woman's defiant stance, despite her clearly disadvantaged position, gave him pause. The Krell's clawed hand closed around her throat, lifting her feet off the ground. Damn it, Jack muttered, changing course. 3 minutes later, the Krell was unconscious on the floor, and Jack was guiding the green-skinned woman through the back exit of the cosmic drift, his left knuckles bleeding slightly where they'd connected with the alien's hardened jaw. I didn't ask for your help, she said, her voice melodic but with a razor's edge. Up close, her skin was a delicate azure green, marked with subtle patterns that seemed to shift with her breathing. You're welcome, Jack replied dryly, checking the chrono on his wrist. 50 minutes until the rendezvous. Can you find your way from here? She straightened her black bodysuit, which Jack now noticed bore the subtle insignia of high-end combat gear. I know exactly where I'm going. Something in her tone made Jack pause. Look, lady. Nurella, she offered, though her eyes solid silver without visible pupils remained guarded. Nurella, Jack continued. Whatever trouble you're in, it's none of my business. I've got a schedule to keep. A small smile played at the corners of her blue lips. Don't we all? Jack Evans. The fact that she knew his name sent another warning signal through Jack's mind. But before he could question her, she had slipped into the crowded street, disappearing among the diverse denizens of Nexus Prime. Jack shook his head and headed toward the spaceport. He had a package to collect and a payment to earn. His ship, the Stellar Rogue, waited in a private docking by a modified XR-97 Corsair. Not the newest model, but customized extensively to outrun most official patrol vessels. It was home, freedom, and livelihood all wrapped into one sleek hull. Docking Bay 94 was dim and seemingly abandoned when Jack arrived. His hand instinctively moved to the blaster holstered at his hip. Safety still engaged as always, until the moment it needed to be otherwise. His footsteps echoed on the metal flooring as he approached the central loading area. A blue case sat alone on a cargo platform. No courier, no guard. Nothing but the case itself, gleaming with an almost metallic luster under the bay's sparse lighting. Jack approached cautiously, scanning for surveillance or traps. Finding nothing obvious, he knelt to examine the container. It was smaller than he'd expected, perhaps 2 feet long and half as wide, made of a material he couldn't immediately identify. No visible locking mechanism, but a faint hum emanated from within, suggesting active technology. Curious, isn't it? Jack spun, drawing his blaster in one fluid motion. There, stepping from the shadows, was Norella, the green-skinned woman from the bar. Now, however, she held a sleek pulse rifle pointed directly at his chest. "You set me up," Jack stated, keeping his blaster steady despite the obvious disadvantage. A pulse rifle could vaporize him before his energy bolt crossed half the distance between them. "Not exactly," Norella replied, moving closer with predatory grace. "I was going to intercept the courier. You presented a more interesting opportunity." "The package is yours?" "It will be." She gestured with her weapon. "Lower your blaster, human." Jack assessed his options, finding them severely limited. "If you wanted me dead, you'd have shot without the conversation." "Perceptive. I need this case delivered. You have a ship and a reputation for reliability." "I already have a client." Norella smiled, revealing teeth just slightly sharper than human standard. "Your client won't be coming. The Vanguard intercepted them 20 minutes ago." The Vanguard, the militarized peacekeeping force of the Human Xeno Alliance. Getting caught in their crosshairs meant prison at best, summary execution at worst. "So I'm your backup plan," Jack said, slowly shifting his weight. "Why should I help you after you lied to me?" "Triple the original offer, plus my protection if the Vanguard comes looking." "You seem awfully confident for someone in your position." Norella's silver eyes narrowed. "What position would that be?" In one swift movement, Jack kicked the cargo platform. The blue case slid across the floor as the platform crashed into the nearby wall, creating a momentary distraction. Jack dove behind a stack of shipping containers as Norella fired, the pulse blast scorching the space where he'd stood. "Impressive reflexes," she called out, "but ultimately futile." Jack moved silently between the containers, working his way around to flank her. The blue case lay exposed in the center of the bathed prize they both sought. He needed to reach his ship, with or without the package. If the Vanguard was involved, the entire spaceport could be locked down at any moment. He climbed atop a container, gaining a vantage point. Norella was scanning the area methodically, her rifle ready. Jack aimed carefully, then fired a shot at the overhead lighting panel. Sparks showered down as the bay plunged into darkness, emergency lights casting everything in a red glow. Jack leapt from container to container, making his way toward the case. He heard Norella moving below, tracking his progress by sound alone. He dropped down beside the case, grabbed it, and sprinted toward the exit. A pulse blast hit the wall inches from his head. Jack spun, firing back twice as he continued running backward. He reached the doorway, then felt the cold press of a weapon against his temple. "Any last words, human?" Norella's voice was soft in his ear. Jack turned his head slightly, meeting her silver gaze with a smirk. "Yeah, safety's on." Norella's eyes widened fractionally as she glanced at her rifle. In that split second of distraction, Jack twisted, knocking the weapon aside and pressing his own blaster under her chin. "Oldest trick in the book," he said, "but it works." To his surprise, Norella laughed a genuine, musical sound. "I underestimated you, Jack Evans." "Most people do. Now, what's in the case that's worth dying for?" Before she could answer, the distant wail of Vanguard sirens filled the air. Jack cursed under his breath. They were out of time. "We can discuss it aboard your ship," Norella suggested. "Unless you prefer Vanguard hospitality." Jack weighed his options quickly. The smart play was to leave her and the mysterious case behind, but curiosity and the promise of triple payments weighed him. "Fine, but try anything, and you'll learn my safety is actually off." They ran through the corridors of the spaceport, the blue case tucked under Jack's arm. The Stellar Rogue waited in Docking Bay 17, engines already in pre-flight mode, thanks to the remote command Jack had sent from his wrist device. As they approached the ship, the distinctive, heavy footfalls of Vanguard troopers echoed down the adjacent corridor. Jack punched in the access code, the loading ramp descending with agonizing slowness. "They're coming," Norella warned, raising her rifle toward the sound. "No shooting unless absolutely necessary," Jack ordered, pushing her up the ramp as soon as there was enough clearance. Firefights in spaceports tend to escalate quickly. The interior of the Stellar Rogue was compact, but efficiently designed. Jack secured the blue case in a hidden compartment beneath the deck plates, then slid into the pilot's seat. Norella took the co-pilot position without being asked, her fingers moving confidently over the unfamiliar controls. "You've flown a Corsair before," Jack observed, initiating the launch sequence. "Among other things." She activated the shield systems just as the first Vanguard troops burst into the docking bay. "Hold on," Jack warned, bypassing several safety protocols. The Stellar Rogue lifted off with a sudden jerk, then shot forward through the still opening bay doors, scraping the ship's underside with a teeth-clenching screech of metal. They burst into Nexus Prime's chaotic skyway traffic, immediately pursued by two Vanguard interceptors. Jack wove through the lanes of flying vehicles, pushing the ship's capabilities to their limits. "We need to lose them before hitting the atmosphere," he shouted over the blaring proximity alarms. "There's a maintenance passage through the lower district that's too narrow for their ships." Norella nodded, pulling up a holographic map of the city. "There, Sector 7G. If you can thread that needle, we might make it." Jack banked hard, diving the ship between towering structures. The Vanguard interceptors followed, firing warning shots that dissipated harmlessly against the Rogue's shields. "They're not trying to kill us," Norella noted. "They want the case intact." "Lucky us," Jack muttered, spotting the narrow passage ahead barely wider than his ship. "This is going to be close." He cut power to the main thrusters, switching to maneuvering jets only. The Stellar Rogue slipped into the maintenance tunnel, scraping along both sides as metal screamed against metal. Behind them, one of the interceptors attempted to follow, only to become wedged in the opening. "One down," Jack announced, navigating through the claustrophobic passage. "But they'll have more waiting at the other end." Norella was checking a small device on her wrist. "The case is emitting a tracking signal. They can follow us anywhere in the system." "Wonderful!" Jack guided the ship around a sharp turn. "Can you disable it?" "Not without opening it, which I'd rather not do until we're safely in deep space." The tunnel ended abruptly, opening into a vast industrial zone. As predicted, 3 more Vanguard vessels hovered nearby, weapons trained on the exit point. "Options?" Norella asked, surprisingly calm. Jack grinned. flipping a series of switches overhead. "Ever heard of a ghost drive?" Before she could answer, he activated the experimental system. The stellar rogue shimmered momentarily, then seemed to split into 5 identical images, each solid-looking, but only one real. All 5 ships burst from the tunnel simultaneously, flying in different directions. "Illegal technology," Norella observed, watching the Vanguard ships hesitate, then split up in pursuit of the decoys. "Impressive. It only lasts 3 minutes, and takes hours to recharge," Jack explained, pushing the real ship straight up toward the atmosphere while the Vanguard chased phantoms. "So, we'd better make them count." They broke through Nexus Prime's upper atmosphere moments later, the black of space enveloping them. Jack plotted a rapid course away from the planet, jumping to hyperspace before the Vanguard could reorganize their pursuit. The blur of hyperspace surrounded them, the familiar streaks of light indicating safe passage through the dimensional shortcut. Only then did Jack allow himself to relax slightly, running a hand through his copper hair. "Now," he said, turning to face Norella, "we have a conversation about what exactly I'm transporting, and why the Vanguard wants it badly enough to mobilize half their fleet." Norella's silver eyes studied him for a long moment. "It's called the Nexus Cipher, a technological artifact created by my people, the Azurans." "Never heard of Azurans." "Few have. We prefer to remain obscure." She leaned forward. "The cipher contains coordinates and activation codes for a network of ancient technology scattered throughout this galaxy and beyond. Technology that could either unite species in peaceful cooperation or provide unstoppable weapons, depending on who controls it." Jack frowned. "And you're what? Stealing it for yourself?" "Returning it to its rightful guardians," she corrected. "It was taken from our sanctuary world by agents of the hegemony, who plan to sell it to the highest bidder." "The hegemony," Jack repeated. The loosely organized collection of systems opposed to Alliance governance had been growing more aggressive lately. "So the Vanguard was trying to intercept it before it could be weaponized. And now I'm caught between all sides." Norella nodded. "The Vanguard, the hegemony, the consortium, they all want the cipher, but none of them understand its true nature." Jack glanced toward the hidden compartment where the case lay. "Which is?" "It's alive, in a sense, semi-sentient. It bonds with its designated keeper." "And that's you?" A strange expression crossed Norella's face. "That remains to be seen." Jack leaned back in his chair, considering their situation. "Where exactly am I taking you and this living puzzle box?" "The Azuran Sanctuary on the far side of the Andromeda Gate. Once there, I can ensure the cipher is properly contained. That's a 3-week journey, even with my ship's modifications." Jack rubbed his jaw thoughtfully. "We'll need to make stops for fuel and supplies. Every port will be watching for us." "I have credits and contacts," Norella assured him. "And as I promised, triple your fee upon delivery." Jack studied her carefully. There was more to this story, and to her than she was revealing. But the adventure appealed to him, as did the challenge of outrunning 3 of the most powerful factions in the galaxy. "All right," he decided. "But one condition. Complete honesty from now on. No more surprises." Norella's lips curled into that mysterious smile again. "I can promise to try." It wasn't the reassurance he'd hoped for, but Jack nodded anyway. "First stop, Elysium. I know someone who can help us disappear for a while." As he reprogrammed their hyperspace coordinates, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that he'd just made either the best or worst decision of his life. Either way, there was no turning back now. The pleasure dome of Elysium lived up to its reputation, hanging in orbit around a gas giant with spectacular rings. The massive space station was renowned throughout the galaxy as a playground for the wealthy and well-connected. Its golden domes and spiraling towers gleamed against the planetary backdrop, a monument to indulgence and discretion. Jack docked the Stellar Rogue at a private berth on the station's underside, paying extra for maintenance services that would include changing the ship's transponder signal and repainting its hull. The Vanguard would be looking for them at every major port, but Elysium operated under its own rules, provided one could afford the premium. "We need disguises and a cover story," Jack explained as they disembarked, the blue case hidden in a modified backpack he carried. "Couples draw less attention than individuals." Norella raised an eyebrow. "You want us to pose as a couple?" "Married, specifically. Celebrating our 5th anniversary." Jack led her through the docking area, toward the luxury lifts. "Elysium caters to romance tourists. We'll blend right in." "And the case?" "Personal effects, valuable mementos. No one searches honeymooners' luggage here. Bad for business." They ascended to the main concourse, a sprawling promenade lined with boutiques, restaurants, and entertainment venues. Holographic butterflies fluttered overhead, while the subtle scent of exotic flowers permeated the air, all carefully engineered to create an atmosphere of enchantment. Jack approached the concierge desk, where a humanoid with shimmering golden skin greeted them with a practiced smile. "Welcome to the Pleasure Dome of Elysium. How may we enhance your visit?" "Reservation for Evans," Jack replied smoothly. "The anniversary package." The concierge consulted a holographic display. Yes. 5 years of marital bliss. Congratulations to you both." Their golden eyes flickered briefly to Norella. "The celestial suite is prepared. Would you like a bonding retreat added to your itinerary?" Jack glanced at Norella, who maintained a neutral expression. "That sounds perfect." "Excellent. Your relationship counselor will meet you in your suite at 900 tomorrow." The concierge handed over 2 iridescent keycards. "Enjoy your celebration." As they walked toward the residential towers, Norella spoke quietly. "Relationship counselor? Bonding retreats are Elysium's specialty," Jack explained. "Couples activities, guided meditation, trust exercises. It's the perfect cover, keeps us busy while the ship is being modified. And no one will question why we're staying close to each other." "You've done this before." Jack smiled. "First time with an Azuran wife." The celestial suite occupied the entire top floor of one of the smaller domes. Floor-to-ceiling windows provided a breathtaking view of the gas giant and its rings, while the interior was decorated in soothing blues and silvers. A single massive bed dominated the sleeping area. "I'll take the couch," Jack offered, securing the backpack in a hidden wall safe. Norella was examining the room with professional interest, likely assessing defensive positions and escape routes. "Do you think we were followed?" "Always assume yes," Jack replied. "But Elysium has the best security in the quadrant. We should be safe for a few days." Norella moved to the window, her silhouette striking against the planetary backdrop. "The Vanguard won't give up easily, especially not Commander Vex." Jack paused in his inspection of the room's amenities. "You know Vex personally?" "We've crossed paths." She turned to face him. "He's ruthlessly efficient and utterly committed to maintaining the Alliance's dominance. If he suspects the Cypher's capabilities, he'll stop at nothing to acquire it." "Charming." Jack activated the room's privacy shields, preventing any surveillance. "Tomorrow we play the happy couple. Tonight, I need to contact my supplier about those modified transponder codes." While Jack worked, Norella showered and changed into the complimentary attire provided by the sweet flowing garments in shimmering fabric that complemented her green skin. When she emerged, Jack found himself momentarily distracted from his communications. "Problem?" she asked, noticing his gaze. "Just thinking our cover might be more convincing than I anticipated," he admitted. A hint of amusement crossed her features. "Focus on the mission, Jack Evans." "Always do." He returned to his work, but not before catching the subtle smile she tried to hide. The relationship counselor arrived precisely at Oro 900A, serene Delphian, with opalescent skin and flowing robes. She introduced herself as Harmony and invited them to join her in the suite's meditation garden. "Today, we begin your renewal journey," she explained, gesturing for them to sit on cushions facing each other. 5 years of partnership is a significant milestone. Now, we strengthen your bond for the journey ahead. Jack and Norella exchanged glances, both recognizing the need to maintain their cover. They sat as instructed, knees almost touching. "First, I sense tension between you," Harmony observed. "Physical proximity but emotional distance. Let us bridge this gap with the truth exercise." She placed a small device between them and empathy enhancer, designed to amplify emotional resonance between participants. Each will ask a question. Each will answer truthfully. Begin. Jack went first, asking a safely benign question about Norella's favorite color. She answered, "The ultraviolet spectrum beyond human perception," which earned a pleased nod from Harmony. When Norella's turn came, her silver eyes fixed on Jack with unexpected intensity. "Why did you help me in the bar that night? You could have walked away." The question caught him off guard. It was actually something he'd been wondering himself. The empathy enhancer hummed softly, encouraging honesty. "I don't like bullies," he began, then stopped, feeling the device's subtle pressure for a deeper truth. "And there was something in your eyes. Determination. Purpose. It reminded me of someone I used to know." Harmony nodded approvingly. "Connection through recognition. Excellent." The exercise continued, questions growing increasingly personal. Jack learned that Norella had been trained as a guardian from childhood, that she'd never known her parents, that she found human music strangely moving. She learned about his years in the Alliance Navy before he deserted, about the sister he hadn't seen in a decade, about his dream of someday finding a place to call home that wasn't a spaceship. By the time Harmony concluded the session, something had shifted between them, a tentative trust built on shared vulnerabilities. "Tomorrow, the physical trust exercises," Harmony announced as she departed. "Prepare to catch each other." Alone again. Jack and Norella moved somewhat awkwardly around the suite, the artificial intimacy of the session lingering. "That was," Jack began. "Surprisingly effective," Norella finished. She stood by the window again, her preferred spot. "Their empathy technology is quite sophisticated." "Didn't tell me anything I wouldn't have eventually," Jack claimed, though they both knew it wasn't entirely true. Norella turned to face him. "The ship modifications?" "Another 2 days. Minimum." Jack checked his secure communicator. "We should use the time to plan our approach to the Andromeda Gate. The security there has been doubled since the border skirmishes began." As they discussed strategy, Jack found himself watching Norella's expressions, noting the subtle shifts that he might have missed before. The truth exercise had changed his perception of her no longer just a dangerous client, but a person with depths and complexities of her own. That night, as Jack tried to sleep on the admittedly comfortable couch, he heard Norella moving restlessly in the bedroom. Something was troubling her, but he knew better than to pry. Whatever bond had formed between them today was fragile, easily shattered by pushing too hard, too fast. Instead, he focused on their escape plan, mentally reviewing alternative routes and contingencies. One thing was certain: the relative peace of Elysium wouldn't last. Sooner or later, trouble would find them. He didn't have to wait long. The next morning, as they prepared for their second session with Harmony, Jack's security alerts triggered on his wrist device. "Vanguard," he said grimly, showing Norella the notification. "A full squad, just docked at the central hub." Norella moved immediately to the safe, retrieving the backpack with the cipher. "How did they find us?" "They must have tracked the ship despite the modifications." Jack grabbed his emergency pack from beneath the couch. "We need to move. Now." They exited the suite, just as Harmony arrived for their session. The counselor's serene expression shifted to confusion as they hurried past her. "Your trust exercises," she began. "Rain check," Jack called back. Relationship emergency. They took the service elevator down, avoiding the main concourse where Vanguard troops would likely be establishing checkpoints. Jack's mind raced through their options. The ship was still undergoing modifications, its systems partially disassembled. They needed another way off the station. The shuttle bay, he decided as they reached the maintenance level. We can borrow a pleasure craft. Narella nodded in agreement, following closely as they navigated the utilitarian corridors that stood in stark contrast to the opulence above. They passed startled maintenance workers who paid them little attention, just another couple who'd wandered off the tourist path. They were nearing the shuttle bay when a familiar voice called out behind them. Jack Evans and the Azuran thief. How convenient. They turned to find Commander Vex standing at the intersection of corridors, flanked by 4 heavily armed Vanguard troops. Vex was tall and lean, with the distinctive silver implants at his temples that marked high-ranking Vanguard officers. His uniform was immaculate, his posture perfect, his expression coldly triumphant. Commander, Jack acknowledged, subtly positioning himself between Narella and the troops. Fancy meeting you here. Enjoying the amenities? Spare me your wit, deserter, Vex replied. You're harboring a fugitive and transporting stolen technology. The penalties for either would keep you imprisoned for decades. Together? He smiled thinly. Let's just say it would be more merciful to execute you now. Jack felt Narella tense beside him, ready to fight. He placed a restraining hand on her arm. 4 armed troops plus Vex made for poor odds, even with their combined skills. What if we were to hand over the case? Jack suggested, buying time as he assessed escape routes. Negotiate terms? Vex laughed, a sound devoid of humor. The time for negotiation has passed. The cipher belongs to the Alliance. It's too dangerous for any individual to possess. Yet you would wield it yourself, Narella countered, her voice laced with contempt. I would secure it, Vex corrected. Ensure it cannot be used to destabilize the peace we've worked so hard to maintain. Peace enforced by dominance isn't peace at all, she shot back. Vex's expression hardened. Philosophical debates can continue in custody. Surrender the cipher and your weapons. Now. Jack's hand inched toward his blaster. If he could create a distraction, Narella might escape with the case. It wasn't an ideal plan, but it was the only one he could formulate in the moment. Before he could act, the station's emergency alarms blared to life. Red warning lights flashed in the corridor as an automated voice announced, Security breach in Central Hub. All civilians proceed to designated shelter areas. This is not a drill. Vex's attention wavered for just an instant, enough for Jack to draw his blaster and fire at the ceiling panel above the Vanguard troops. It crashed down, temporarily separating them from their pursuers. Run! Jack shouted, grabbing Narella's hand and sprinting toward the shuttle bay. Behind them, Vex's voice carried over the alarms. Seal all exits! They must not leave the station! They burst into the shuttle bay, a vast hangar housing dozens of sleek pleasure craft used by Elysium's guests for scenic tours of the planetary rings. Jack headed straight for the nearest vehicle, a luxury model with enhanced engines. Can you fly this thing? He asked, as they reached the craft. Better than you, Narella replied, already hacking the access panel. The shuttle's door slid open, and they climbed inside just as Vanguard troops poured into the hangar. Narella took the pilot seat, her fingers flying over the controls. The craft hummed to life, lifting off the deck as Jack secured the rear door. They're activating the bay force field, he warned, watching through the viewports as the massive energy barrier began to materialize across the hangar opening. Hold on, Narella instructed, ramming the throttle forward. The shuttle shot toward the narrowing gap, engines screaming in protest at the sudden acceleration. Jack braced himself as they scraped through the partially formed barrier, energy crackling across the hull, but failing to stop their momentum. They burst into open space, the gas giant looming large before them. Behind, Vanguard interceptors were already launching from the station. We need to lose them in the rings, Norella decided, piloting the craft into a steep dive toward the planet. Jack strapped himself into the co-pilot seat, activating the shuttle's limited defensive systems. This pleasure craft isn't built for combat or evasion. Neither are the interceptors, she pointed out. They're designed for open space pursuits, not navigating dense particulate fields. She guided the shuttle into the breathtaking rings of the gas giant bands of ice, rock, and dust that stretched for thousands of kilometers. The larger fragments ranged from microscopic particles to chunks the size of small moons, creating a treacherous maze of natural obstacles. The interceptors followed, their superior engines quickly closing the distance. Energy blasts flashed past the shuttle, most intended to disable rather than destroy. "They're still trying to take us alive," Jack noted, watching the tactical display. "For now," Norella replied grimly, executing a series of tight maneuvers between larger fragments. "Once we're deep enough in the rings, they'll lose visual contact and switch to more aggressive tactics." Jack activated the shuttle's countermeasures, designed for emergency asteroid avoidance, but useful for creating confusion in the dense ring environment. False sensor readings bloomed across the pursuing vessel's navigation systems. One interceptor veered off to avoid a phantom collision, crashing into an actual ice fragment the size of a small building. The resulting explosion temporarily scattered the ring particles, creating a chaotic vortex that Norella skillfully navigated. "Two more on our tail," Jack reported, "and they're adapting to our countermeasures." Norella pushed the shuttle deeper into the rings, where larger fragments created a natural labyrinth. The craft shuddered as micro-impacts peppered the hull, its shields gradually weakening under the constant bombardment. "We can't stay here much longer," she warned. The hull wasn't designed for this environment. Jack spotted a massive chunk of ice and rock ahead, nearly a kilometer across, rotating slowly. "There. If we can get to the far side, we might break their sensor lock long enough to change course." Norella nodded, adjusting their trajectory toward the miniature moon. As they approached, Jack noticed an unusual feature, a deep crevasse running across its surface, barely wide enough for their shuttle. "Through there," he suggested, pointing. Norella's silver eyes widened slightly. "That's ambitious." "Trust exercise," Jack replied with a grim smile. "Isn't that what we're supposed to be doing today?" Without further hesitation, Norella angled the shuttle toward the narrow opening. The pursuing interceptors hesitated, then split upon, following directly, the other moving to circle around the massive fragment. The shuttle plunged into the crevasse, ice walls rising on either side. Norella reduced their speed just enough to maintain control, trusting Jack's judgment despite the obvious risk. The passage twisted and narrowed, forcing them to tilt the craft almost sideways at points. Behind them, the Vanguard interceptor attempted to follow but misjudged the clearance. Its wing clipped the ice wall, sending it spinning into the opposite surface in a spectacular explosion that collapsed part of the crevasse behind them. "One down," Jack announced. "One to go." They emerged from the far side of the ice moon, momentarily clear of pursuit. Norella immediately changed course, using the fragment itself to shield them from sensors as they accelerated away from the ring system. "The stellar rogue," Jack said. "We need to get back to Elysium and retrieve it, finished modifications or not." Norella shook her head. "The station will be locked down. We need another plan." Jack considered their options. "Cygnus Outpost. It's a research facility in the next system. Officially neutral territory. I know someone there who might help us." "Someone trustworthy?" "Dr. Alara Voss, former Alliance scientist, now independent researcher. We have history." Norella glanced at him. "What kind of history?" "The complicated kind," Jack admitted. "But she has no love for the Vanguard, and she might be able to tell us more about the cipher." As if responding to its mention, the blue case pulsed faintly from where they'd secured it behind the pilot's seats. A soft humming filled the shuttle cabin, followed by a subtle vibration that seemed to resonate with the craft's structure. "It's activating," Norella said, her voice tight with concern. "Is that bad?" "Unknown. The cipher responds to proximity to certain energy signatures. Passing through the ring system may have triggered it." The humming grew louder, and the case began to emit a faint, blue glow around its edges. Jack unfastened his harness and moved cautiously toward it. "Maybe we should open it," he suggested. "See what we're dealing with." Norella hesitated, then nodded. "Carefully. The initial bonding process can be intense." Jack knelt beside the case, examining its seamless surface. Now that it was active, a previously invisible seam had appeared along one edge. He pressed his fingers against it, feeling a slight resistance before the top portion of the case slid open with surprising smoothness. Inside lay a perfect cube, approximately 6 inches on each side, composed of what appeared to be translucent crystal, shot through with threads of blue energy. Symbols scrolled across its surfaces in a language Jack didn't recognize, while the energy within pulsed in a rhythm reminiscent of a heartbeat. "The Nexus cipher," Norella breathed, setting the shuttle's autopilot and joining him. As they watched, the cube rose slightly from its cushioned resting place, hovering an inch above the case. The blue energy within intensified, tendrils reaching out toward both of them. "What's it doing?" Jack asked, fighting the urge to back away. "Scanning. Assessing." Norella's voice had taken on a reverent quality. "It's seeking its keeper." The energy tendrils withdrew from Jack after a moment, concentrating instead on Norella. They touched her skin, and she gasped as they seemed to sink beneath the surface, creating glowing patterns along her arms that matched the natural markings of her skin. "Norella?" Jack reached for her, but she held up a hand to stop him. "It's all right," she assured him, though her voice trembled slightly. "This is expected. The cipher recognizes Azuran physiology." The cube floated closer to her, the symbols on its surface scrolling faster. A beam of light projected from one face, scanning her from head to toe. Then, abruptly, it returned to the case, and the glow subsided. Norella slumped slightly, and Jack caught her arm to steady her. "What just happened?" "Initial recognition," she explained, her breathing shallow. "It's aligned with me now. It will respond to my biometric signature." "Is that good or bad?" "Good for our mission." She straightened, the patterns on her skin still faintly luminescent. "But it also means the cipher is now fully active. Its signal will be detectable by anyone with the right technology." "Including the Vanguard," Jack concluded grimly. "And the hegemony. And likely the consortium as well." Norella returned to the pilot seat. "We need to reach Cygnus Outpost quickly. Your friend may be our only hope of understanding what happens next." Jack secured the case, noting that it no longer fully closed if the cipher inside had permanently altered its configuration. "Course laid in. We'll arrive in approximately 7 hours, assuming no further pursuit." As they left the ring system behind, accelerating toward the jump point that would take them to the Cygnus system, Jack studied Norella's profile. The encounter with the cipher had changed her somehow. There was a new tension in her posture, a subtle glow beneath her green skin that hadn't been there before. "You knew this would happen," he said. Not a question, but a statement. She didn't look at him. "I knew it was possible." "What aren't you telling me, Norella?" Now she did turn, her silver eyes meeting his with unexpected vulnerability. "The cipher doesn't just bond with its keeper, Jack. It changes them, prepares them." "For what?" "For whatever purpose the cipher deems necessary." She looked down at her hands, where the glowing patterns were slowly fading back to normal. "Our legends speak of keepers who became conduits for immense knowledge, or who developed abilities beyond normal Azuran capabilities." "And you volunteered for this?" "I was chosen." Her voice was quiet but firm. "When the cipher was stolen, I was sent to retrieve it because our elders believed I would be compatible. What they didn't tell me was that the compatibility is based on genetic markers I didn't know I carried." Jack frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means I may be more than just a guardian." Norella's expression was troubled. "I may be what my people call a nexus bornone, whose genetic structure was designed specifically to interface with the ancient technology." The implications settled heavily between them. Jack had signed on to transport a valuable artifact and a fugitive. Now he was caught in the middle of something far more complex, potentially involving genetic engineering and technologies beyond current understanding. "Your people designed you?" he asked carefully. "Perhaps. Or perhaps I'm simply a random genetic match." She shrugged, trying to appear unconcerned, though Jack could see it troubled her deeply. "Either way, what's done is done. We continue to Cygnus Outpost." Jack nodded, settling back into his seat. Whatever Norella was, or might become, they were now irrevocably linked in this adventure. And despite the danger, or perhaps because of it, Jack found himself increasingly unwilling to walk away. The journey to Cygnus Outpost was tense, but uneventful. The small research facility orbited a barren moon, in a system largely ignored by the major powers valuable for its neutrality, rather than any resources it possessed. From a distance, it resembled a complex snowflake, its 6 extending arms housing various laboratories and living quarters, while the central hub contained administrative offices and docking facilities. Jack transmitted the approach codes he'd been given years ago, hoping they hadn't been changed. After a tense moment, the response came. "Shuttle Epsilon 9, you are cleared for docking in Bay 3. Welcome to Cygnus Outpost." They landed without incident, the shuttle systems powering down as atmosphere filled the docking bay. Jack secured the blue case in a standard carry bagless, conspicuous than Norella's combat backpack, and they disembarked, trying to appear as normal visitors rather than fugitives. A slender woman with silver-streaked black hair waited for them at the security checkpoint. Dr. Alara Voss had changed little in the 5 years since Jack had seen her last, still elegant, still sharp-eyed, still radiating the quiet intensity that had first drawn him to her. "Jack Evans," she greeted him, her tone professional, but with an undercurrent of familiarity. "This is an unexpected visit." "Hello, Alara," he replied, feeling Norella's curious gaze. "We need your help." Dr. Voss's eyes shifted to Norella, widening slightly as she recognized the Azuran species. "Interesting company you're keeping these days." She gestured for them to follow her through the checkpoint, using her administrative override to bypass the standard scanning procedures. They followed her through the pristine corridors of the outpost, passing researchers of various species engaged in their work. No one paid them much attention. Visitors weren't common at Cygnus, but neither were they unusual enough to cause comment. Dr. Voss led them to her private laboratory, in the eastern arm of the facility. Once inside, she secured the door and activated privacy protocols that would prevent surveillance or eavesdropping. "Now," she said, turning to face them, "explain why a deserter and an Azuran arrived in a stolen Elysium shuttle, with Vanguard pursuit likely not far behind." Jack placed the carry bag on a nearby table. "We have something that needs analysis. Something important enough that Commander Vex personally led the attempt to capture us." Dr. Voss's expression tightened at the mention of Vex. "Open it." Norella stepped forward, placing her hand on the bag. "First, your word that what you see remains confidential." "My research is my own," Dr. Voss replied coolly. "I share with no one without explicit consent." Satisfied, Norella removed the blue case from the bag and opened it, revealing the crystalline cube inside. It immediately responded to her presence, rising slightly and pulsing with blue energy. Dr. Voss inhaled sharply. "A Nexus artifact, functional and bonded?" She looked at Norella with new respect. "You're a keeper." "You know of these things?" Norella asked, surprised. I've studied fragments long dead pieces with only residual energy signatures. Dr. Voss approached the floating cube cautiously. But never an intact, active specimen. May I? Narella nodded, and Dr. Voss retrieved a handheld scanner from her workstation. She moved it slowly around the cipher, careful not to touch the energy tendrils that occasionally extended toward her. Extraordinary, she murmured. The internal structure is like nothing in any known technological database. It's processing and storing data at the quantum level, possibly even manipulating subspace to... She stopped, looking at Narella. It's changed you. Your cellular structure is being rewritten. What? Jack stepped closer, concerned. The bonding process, Narella explained. I told you it would alter me. Not like this, Dr. Voss contradicted, showing them the scanner display. This isn't just an interface adaptation. Your genetic code is being fundamentally restructured at an accelerating rate. Narella swayed slightly, and Jack moved to support her. Only then did he notice the subtle changes in her appearance. Her skin seemed to pulse with faint, blue light beneath the surface, and her silver eyes now contained swirling patterns like miniature galaxies. How do we stop it? Jack demanded. We don't, Narella said weakly. We can't. Once begun, the process must complete. Dr. Voss was already clearing a medical examination table. Help her lie down. I need to monitor her vital signs. They guided Narella to the table, where she reclined without resistance. The cipher followed, hovering near her head like a concerned companion. Dr. Voss attached monitoring devices to Narella's temples and wrists, then gasped at the readings. This is impossible, she whispered. Her neural activity is off the charts, and there's something else. She adjusted the scanner, focusing on Narella's abdomen. There's a secondary energy signature forming within her, a new pattern, distinct, but connected to both the cipher and her own biology. Jack looked from the scanner to Narella's face. What does that mean? It means, Narella said, her voice strangely calm despite her obvious physical distress, that the legends were true. The cipher doesn't just bond with its keeper. It creates a new life form, a living bridge between the ancient technology and organic beings. You're pregnant? Jack asked incredulously. Not in the conventional sense, Dr. Voss corrected, still studying the readings. But something is growing inside her, a hybrid of organic tissue and technological components. A child of both worlds. Narella placed a hand over her abdomen, where a faint blue glow was now visible through her clothing. This is why the Azuran elders sent me. They knew what would happen. They sent you to become an incubator for alien tech? Jack's voice rose with anger. Without telling you? They told me I would become the vessel for a new beginning, Narella replied. I just didn't understand what that meant until now. Dr. Voss continued her scans, fascination overriding her initial alarm. The development rate is accelerated. What would normally take months appears to be progressing in hours. At this rate, an outpost-wide alarm cut her off. Red emergency lights flashed as an automated voice announced, Proximity alert. Unidentified vessels approaching. All personnel to security stations. Jack moved to the laboratory's external viewports. In the distance, he could see multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace, the sleek silver of Vanguard interceptors, but also the more aggressive, angular designs of hegemony warships. They found us, he said grimly. All of them. The cipher's energy signature, Dr. Voss realized. Once fully activated, it must be broadcasting across subspace channels. We need to leave, Jack decided, returning to Narella's side. Can you walk? She nodded, though her movements were unsteady as she sat up. The cipher remained close to her, its pulsing, now synchronized with the glow emanating from her abdomen. You can't outrun them all, Dr. Voss warned, gathering medical supplies into a portable kit. The outpost has minimal defenses. Once they breach the perimeter, Then we need a plan B, Jack interrupted. Alara, does Cygnus still maintain emergency evacuation shuttles? Yes, in the central hub, but they're designed for short-range transport only. They'll have to do. Jack helped Norella to her feet. We need to reach them before Vex locks down the facility. Dr. Voss hesitated only briefly before grabbing the medical kit and her research tablet. I'm coming with you. Whatever is happening to her, she'll need medical monitoring. They left the laboratory, moving as quickly as Norella's condition allowed through the increasingly chaotic corridors. Researchers and staff rushed in all directions, some to their emergency stations, others simply seeking information about the unexpected alarm. They had nearly reached the central hub when they encountered the first Vanguard troops, a 4-person squad, establishing a checkpoint at the connecting passageway. Jack pulled the others back around a corner before they were spotted. We need a diversion, he whispered. Dr. Voss nodded toward a nearby environmental control panel. I can trigger a localized atmospheric alert. It would force them to investigate. Do it, Jack decided. While Dr. Voss worked on the panel, Jack checked on Norella. Her condition was visibly deteriorating, the glow beneath her skin now constant. Her breathing labored. Hold on, he urged her. We're almost there. She gripped his hand with surprising strength. If we don't make it, Jack, you need to know. The Cipher chose me for a reason. What grows inside me is meant to unite, not divide. It must reach the sanctuary. Before Jack could respond, Dr. Voss rejoined them. Done. When I activate it, we'll have approximately 30 seconds before backup systems correct the false reading. Jack nodded, drawing his blaster. On your mark. Dr. Voss triggered the alert, and immediately alarms blared in the section where the Vanguard troops were stationed. Warning lights flashed, indicating an imminent atmospheric breach. The soldiers hesitated, then moved to investigate as their training required. Now, Jack urged, and they hurried past the vacated checkpoint. The central hub was a large, circular chamber with multiple docking ports and administrative offices surrounding a central information center. It was currently in chaos, with outpost staff trying to coordinate responses to the approaching vessels while maintaining normal operations. Jack spotted the emergency shuttle bay across the Huba-secured area, requiring administrative access. Alara? Dr. Voss nodded, already moving toward the control panel. My clearance should work, assuming they haven't initiated full lockdown protocols yet. As she worked on gaining access, Jack kept Norella upright, one arm around her waist while his other hand held his blaster ready. The Cipher remained in its carry bag, but its glow was now visible through the material, drawing curious and concerned glances from nearby personnel. Almost got it, Dr. Voss reported. The system is asking for secondary authorization. I'm bypassing. Step away from the panel. Dr. Voss, came a familiar, cold voice from behind them. They turned to find Commander Vex standing just meters away, flanked by 6 heavily armed Vanguard troops. His silver temple implants gleamed under the hub's bright lighting, his hand resting casually on his sidearm. Commander, Dr. Voss acknowledged, her finger subtly continuing its work on the panel behind her back. This is a neutral research facility. The Vanguard has no jurisdiction here. Jurisdiction becomes irrelevant when galactic security is at stake. Vex replied smoothly. His gaze moved to Norella, widening slightly at her transformed appearance. The Azuran female appears to be undergoing the suspected mutation. All the more reason she must be contained. Jack positioned himself in front of Norella. She's not a threat. That's not for you to decide. Deserter. Vex's tone hardened. The Cipher and its keeper will be taken to a secure Alliance facility for study. Cooperate, and you may yet avoid execution. And if the hegemony has something to say about that, Jack challenged. I count at least 3 of their warships out there. A flicker of annoyance crossed Vex's perfect features. A complication we're handling. Now, surrender the artifact and Step aside." Jack felt Norella straighten behind him, her hand gripping his shoulder with renewed strength. When she spoke, her voice carried a resonant quality it hadn't possessed before. "The cipher is not yours to command, Vex, nor is it the hegemonies or the consortiums. It belongs to the balance of all life." Vex's hand moved to his weapon. "Final warning. Surrender now." In that moment, several things happened simultaneously. Dr. Voss completed her override of the shuttle bay doors, which slid open with a hydraulic hiss. A tremendous impact rocked the entire outpost as one of the hegemony ships fired on the outer defenses, and Norella's transformation accelerated dramatically, the blue glow enveloping her entire body as she stepped forward, the cipher rising from the carry bag to hover before her. "No," she said simply, and extended her hands. A pulse of blue energy exploded outward from her body, forming a dome that encompassed Jack, Dr. Voss, and herself, while pushing the Vanguard troops backward with concussive force. Vex remained standing, protected by his implant's shield technology. But even he couldn't penetrate the energy field that now separated them. "This way!" Dr. Voss shouted over the alarms, gesturing toward the open shuttle bay. Jack supported Norella, who seemed simultaneously stronger and more fragile in her transformed state. The energy dome moved with them, protecting their retreat as they entered the shuttle bay. Behind them, Vex barked orders to his troops, who began firing ineffectively at the barrier. The emergency shuttle was small, but serviceable, a standard evacuation vessel with basic life support and minimal propulsion systems. Jack helped Norella inside, while Dr. Voss initiated the launch sequence from the external controls. Another impact rocked the outpost, more violent than the first. Warning announcements indicated multiple hull breaches in the outer arms of the facility. The situation was deteriorating rapidly. Dr. Voss joined them in the shuttle, sealing the hatch behind her. "The hegemony and Vanguard ships are engaging each other. We might be able to slip away in the confusion." Jack took the pilot's seat, powering up the engines as the bay doors began to open to space. Norella sat beside him, the cipher hovering between her hands, its blue glow now pulsating in rhythm with the light emanating from her abdomen. "Can you maintain that energy shield while we launch?" Jack asked her. She nodded, though the effort was clearly taxing. "For a short time. It draws from my strength, which is already divided." The shuttle lifted off, guided by Jack's expert handling, despite its unfamiliar controls. They emerged from the bay into open space, immediately confronted by the chaos of battle. Vanguard and hegemony ships exchanged fire around the outpost, while a third faction, likely consortium vessels, approached from the system's edge. "Setting course away from the conflict," Jack announced, pushing the shuttle's engines to their limits. "But this thing doesn't have hyperspace capability. We won't get far." "We don't need to go far," Norella said, her voice strained. "Just far enough." Dr. Voss was monitoring Norella's vital signs on her portable medical scanner. "Whatever's happening inside you is accelerating. Your cellular energy is being channeled into both the shield and the entity growing within." "I know," Norella replied calmly. "I can feel it. The joining is nearly complete." A warning alarm sounded from the shuttle's basic sensor array. "We've been spotted," Jack reported grimly. "2 interceptors breaking off to pursue." The shuttle shuddered as energy blasts passed nearby, warning shots, not yet attempting to disable them. Jack executed evasive maneuvers, but the small craft was no match for military vessels in terms of speed or agility. "We need a miracle," he muttered, scanning for any advantage in the surrounding space. Norella's eyes, now completely filled with swirling blue galaxies, met his. "Perhaps that's exactly what we have." The cipher between her hands began to spin, its facets blurring with the speed of rotation. The blue energy shield surrounding the shuttle intensified, changing from a simple barrier to something more complex, a pattern of interlocking geometric shapes that shifted and realigned continuously. From her abdomen, A beam of concentrated blue light shot upward, connecting with the spinning cipher. The entire shuttle interior was bathed in the ethereal glow as the cipher responded, projecting similar beams outward in all directions. "What's happening?" Jack asked, trying to maintain control of the craft as it began to vibrate with the energy surrounding it. Dr. Voss stared at her scanner in disbelief. "The energy patterns. They're reconfiguring space-time around us. It's creating some kind of localized field distortion. Outside the viewports, space itself seemed to ripple and fold. The pursuing interceptors suddenly appeared to slow, as if moving through thick liquid, while stars blurred and stretched in impossible directions. "Narella!" Jack reached for her, but his hand encountered resistance in the air between them, as if reality itself had become malleable. "Trust the process, Jack," she said, her voice echoing strangely. "The cipher protects its own." The blue light intensified to blinding levels, forcing Jack and Dr. Voss to shield their eyes. The shuttle spun and twisted, caught in forces beyond normal physics. For a moment that seemed both instantaneous and eternal. They existed in a state between dimensions, neither fully in normal space, nor completely elsewhere. Then, with a final pulse of energy that rattled the shuttle to its core, everything stabilized. The blue light receded to a manageable glow, and the viewport cleared to reveal unfamiliar space. The battle, the outpost, the pursuing ships all were gone. "Where are we?" Jack asked, checking the navigation system, only to find it unable to establish their position relative to any known reference points. "Safe," Narella whispered, slumping forward as the cipher gently lowered itself to rest in her lap. For now, Dr. Voss moved quickly to attend to her, scanning for vital signs. "Her system is in shock. The energy expenditure was massive." She looked up at Jack, her expression grave but wondering. "I believe she just initiated a form of quantum translocation, jump through subspace without conventional engines." "Is she going to be all right?" Jack asked, setting the shuttle's systems to standby and joining them. "I don't know," Dr. Voss admitted. "This is beyond any medical science I understand. Her physiology is continuing to change, adapting to support whatever is growing inside her." Jack took Narella's hand, finding it cool to the touch but still pulsing with that strange inner light. "Narella, stay with us." Her eyes flickered open, the galactic swirls within them slowly rotating. "Jack," she murmured. "It worked. The cipher protected us." "Rest now," he urged her. "We're safe." As Dr. Voss administered what medical care she could, Jack returned to the pilot's seat to assess their situation. The shuttle systems were barely functional power levels, critically low after the impossible jump they'd just experienced. Life support was stable but limited, and without knowing their location, navigation was pointless. They drifted in unknown space, surrounded by unfamiliar star patterns, with a transforming Azuran carrying what might be the most important new life form in the galaxy. Jack had survived impossible situations before, but this one tested even his considerable optimism. Hours passed as they drifted, conserving power and monitoring Narella's condition. The glow within her had stabilized, neither increasing nor diminishing, while the cipher remained in its semi-dormant state on her lap. Dr. Voss joined Jack at the controls, her expression thoughtful. "The energy readings are unlike anything I've ever encountered. It's as if the cipher is using her as a conduit to reshape reality on a quantum level." "Is that what the child is?" Jack asked. "Some kind of reality-manipulating entity?" "Perhaps. Or perhaps it's simpler than that, a being capable of interfacing directly with the technology of an advanced civilization, long vanished." She glanced back at Narella's resting form. "Either way, it's clear why everyone wants control of it." Jack nodded grimly. "And why it was stolen in the first place. That kind of power could reshape the galaxy," Dr. Voss finished. "For better or worse." A soft alert from the sensor array interrupted their conversation. Something was approaching, a small object moving at considerable speed, directly toward their position. "We've been found," Jack said, reaching for the shuttle's minimal defensive controls. Dr. Voss studied the readings. "Wait, it's not a ship. It's too small. And the energy signature?" The object came into visual range, a glowing blue sphere approximately a meter in diameter, pulsing with the same energy that emanated from the Cipher and Narella. "It's the same technology," Dr. Voss realized. "Another Cipher artifact?" As they watched, the sphere stopped a short distance from the shuttle. It hovered there for a moment, as if scanning them, then projected a beam of light directly at their vessel. Instead of impacting the hull, however, the beam seemed to pass through it effortlessly, connecting with the Cipher in Narella's lap. The two objects pulsed in synchronized rhythm, communicating in some fashion they couldn't comprehend. Then, without warning, the sphere began to move again, this time slowly, as if inviting them to follow. "I think we just got directions," Jack said, powering up the shuttle's engines. "Are you sure that's wise?" Dr. Voss asked. "It could be leading us into a trap." Jack glanced at Narella, who had stirred at the sphere's appearance, her eyes tracking its movements despite her weakened state. "You got a better idea? We're lost in unknown space with limited life support. I'm willing to take the chance." He guided the shuttle after the sphere, which maintained a consistent distance ahead of them, adjusting its speed to match their capabilities. It led them through the unfamiliar starfield toward what appeared to be a small, unremarkable planetoid. As they approached, however, the planetoid's true nature became apparent. What had seemed like a natural celestial body was actually an enormous structure, space station or habitat, of incredible proportions, its surface designed to mimic a natural environment from a distance. "The Azuran Sanctuary," Narella whispered from behind them, having dragged herself to a standing position despite Dr. Voss's protests. "We found it." The sphere led them to what appeared to be a docking area, massive bay, carved into the side of the structure, illuminated by the same blue energy that powered the Cipher. As they entered, dozens of similar spheres joined their guide, surrounding the shuttle in a protective escort. "I'm reading atmosphere in the bay," Jack reported, as they landed on a crystal-like platform. "Earth normal composition, slightly higher oxygen content." "The sanctuary adapts to accommodate visitors," Narella explained, her strength seemingly returning as they neared their destination. "It exists in a space between normal dimensions, accessible only to those guided by a Cipher." The shuttle powered down as the spheres took positions around it, their light pulsing in a pattern that somehow conveyed a sense of welcome. The Cipher, in Narella's hands, lifted once more, floating before her, as the hatch opened automatically. "We should proceed cautiously," Dr. Voss advised, gathering her medical equipment. Jack helped Narella toward the exit, noting that while she still glowed with inner light, her movements were steadier now. "Any protocols we should be aware of? Sacred greetings? Taboos?" "Just truth," Narella replied. "The sanctuary responds to intention as much as action." They descended the shuttle's ramp into an environment unlike anything Jack had ever experienced. The docking bay opened into a vast chamber that seemed to exist in multiple states simultaneously, at once a technological marvel of crystal and energy, a natural cavern of living stone, and a cathedral-like space of impossible dimensions. Pathways of solid light extended from the platform where they stood, connecting to other areas of the sanctuary. The air itself felt charged with potential, as if reality here was more suggestion than certainty. "This way," Narella directed, following one of the light paths with newfound confidence. The Cipher floated ahead of her like an eager guide, while the blue glow within her abdomen pulsed with increasing intensity. Jack and Dr. Voss exchanged glances, then followed. What choice did they have? They had come too far to turn back now. The path led them to a central chamber where the true nature of the sanctuary revealed itself. Thousands of cipher cubes, spheres, pyramids, and shapes that defied Euclidean geometry floated in a complex dance around a central column of pure blue energy that stretched beyond sight in both directions. "The Nexus," Narella breathed, approaching the column with reverence. "The connecting point between all dimensions, all possibilities." As she neared the energy column, her transformation accelerated once more. The blue glow enveloped her completely, lifting her gently from the ground until she hovered at the same height as her cipher. The cube spun before her, its facets realigning into new configurations as it responded to the central nexus. Jack stepped forward, concerned, but found his path blocked by an invisible barrier. "Narella!" She turned to face him, her form now barely distinguishable within the blue energy cocoon. "It's all right, Jack. This is what was meant to happen, the culmination of the journey." Dr. Voss scanned frantically with her medical device. The entity within her is preparing to emerge. Her biological systems are being supported entirely by the cipher's energy now. Jack pressed against the barrier, watching helplessly as Narella was drawn closer to the central column. "Will she survive?" "I don't know," Dr. Voss admitted. "There's no precedent for this in any medical record." Within the energy cocoon, Narella seemed to be speaking not to them, but to the nexus itself, or perhaps to the life growing inside her. Her words were inaudible, but her expression conveyed a mix of pain and transcendent joy. The cipher that had accompanied them spun faster, expanding and contracting in rhythmic pulses. The other artifacts in the chamber joined in, creating a symphony of movement and light that built toward some incomprehensible crescendo. Then, with a flash of light that temporarily blinded them, the barrier fell. When Jack's vision cleared, he saw Narella floating gently back to the ground, the blue energy receding to a soft glow beneath her skin. In her arms, she cradled what appeared to be an infant humanoid in basic form, but with skin that shifted between azure-green flesh and crystalline transparency. Jack rushed forward, catching Narella as her feet touched the ground. She leaned against him, exhausted but smiling. The child, for there was no other word for it, gazing up at them with eyes that contained the same galactic swirls as its mother's. "It's done," she whispered. "The joining is complete. A new guardian is born." Dr. Voss approached cautiously, her scanner held before her. "Incredible. The child's biology is unlike anything I've ever seen, part organic, part energy matrix. It exists simultaneously in multiple states of being." The infant made a sound, not a cry, but a musical tone that caused the surrounding ciphers to pulse in response. Narella adjusted her hold, cradling the child closer. "He will be the bridge," she explained, "between your world and mine, between organic life and the ancient network, between past and future possibilities." "He?" Jack asked, finding himself oddly moved by the scene. "Yes," Narella confirmed. "A son. Our son." The word hung in the air between them, its implications vast and unexpected. Jack looked from Narella to the child, seeing something of himself reflected in its features, despite the alien nature of its existence. "I don't understand," he said finally. "How can he be mine?" Dr. Voss checked her scanner again. "Genetic markers," she confirmed with surprise. "The child's DNA contains sequences from both Narella and you, Jack. The cipher must have sampled your genetic material during your interactions and incorporated it into the creation process. The sanctuary recognized the bond between us," Narella explained softly. "The trust that formed. It deemed our combined traits ideal for the new guardian." Jack stared at the childish son with a mixture of awe and terror. He had never imagined fatherhood, certainly not like this. Yet as the infant reached up with a tiny hand that shifted between flesh and crystal, something protective and fiercely loving awakened within him. "What happens now?" he asked, tentatively touching the child's hand with his finger. "We must reach the inner sanctuary," Narella replied. "Complete the ritual of introduction and ensure our son is recognized by the full Nexus network." She began walking toward another light path that had appeared, leading deeper into the sanctuary. Jack and Dr. Voss followed, still processing the extraordinary developments they had witnessed. "Will you stay here?" Jack asked, the question that had been forming in his mind, finally finding voice. "Is this where you and our son belong now?" Narella glanced back at him, her expression softening. "The sanctuary is a nexus point, not a permanent home. The Guardians move throughout the galaxy, watching, guiding, maintaining balance. We will be needed elsewhere." Relief washed through Jack, though he wasn't entirely sure why. The idea of Narella and their child disappearing into this mystical sanctuary had filled him with unexpected dread. The inner sanctuary was a vast chamber where the blue energy seemed to coalesce into patterns of incredible complexity. The ceiling, if it could be called that, appeared to be a window into deep space itself, showing stars and nebulae from perspectives impossible in normal space. In the center stood a raised platform of crystal, surrounded by hovering ciphers of various configurations. As they approached, the artifacts parted to create a path for Narella and the child. "This is the recognition chamber," she explained, her voice reverent. "Here, new Guardians are presented to the Nexus network and given their purpose." She stepped onto the platform, cradling their son. The infant was awake and alert, his eyes tracking the movement of the ciphers with uncanny awareness. Jack and Dr. Voss remained at the edge, instinctively understanding this moment was not for them to intrude upon. Narella raised the child toward the cosmic display above. "I present this new Guardian, born of two worlds, to the eternal Nexus. May he serve the balance of all existence, protect the knowledge of the ancients, and guide those who seek understanding." The chamber responded with a pulse of energy that flowed from the ceiling to the platform, enveloping both Narella and the child in gentle blue light. The baby made that musical sound again, longer and more complex this time, seeming to communicate directly with the sanctuary itself. After a moment that seemed to stretch beyond normal time, the light receded. Narella turned to face them, her expression serene but tinged with new purpose. "It is done," she said. "He has been recognized and accepted." Jack approached cautiously, drawn by an inexplicable need to be closer to this childish son. "Does he have a name?" Narella considered this. In the Azuran tradition, Guardians receive their true names upon completing their first great task. Until then, he would be known by a placeholder, a promise of what he might become. "And what would that be?" She looked down at the infant, who had fallen into a peaceful sleep. "Nexus children are often called Kale, those who bridge worlds." "Kale," Jack repeated, testing the name. It felt right somehow. A perfect designation for this impossible child, born of their unlikely connection. Dr. Voss had been examining the sanctuary with professional curiosity, but now she rejoined them. "This place exists outside normal space-time," she observed. "But we can't stay here indefinitely. The Vanguard, the Hegemony, they'll continue searching for the cipher, for Narella, and now for the child as well." "The sanctuary offers protection," Narella explained. "But Dr. Voss is right. We cannot hide here forever. The Guardian's purpose is to interact with the galaxy, to guide and protect, not to isolate from it." Jack's mind raced through options. "The Andromeda Gate Research Colony," he suggested. "You mentioned it before. Would we be safe there?" "Safer than most places," Narella agreed. "It's remote, populated mainly by scientists and explorers. The Azuran presence there is small, but established. We could find allies." "And I have colleagues there," Dr. Voss added. "Researchers who value knowledge over politics. They would help us understand the child's unique physiology. Jack nodded. Decision made. Then that's our destination. But first, we need a better ship than that shuttle. Something with range, defenses, and enough space for a family. The word felt strange on his tongue, yet undeniably right. Narella smiled, a genuine expression that transformed her features from merely beautiful to radiant. The sanctuary can provide transportation. The Guardians have always maintained vessels capable of navigating both normal space and the pathways between dimensions. She led them through another series of chambers, each more wondrous than the last, until they reached what appeared to be a hangar bay. Several ships of unfamiliar design rested on crystalline platforms, sleek vessels with organic curves that seemed to blend biological and technological elements. These are Nexus ships, Narella explained. Faster than conventional vessels, invisible to standard sensors, and capable of utilizing the same translocation technology that brought us here. Jack approached the nearest craft, running an appreciative hand along its hull. "She's beautiful." "The smallest should suit our needs," Narella suggested, indicating a vessel approximately twice the size of the Stellar Rogue. Designed for a Guardian and small crew. As they boarded the ship, Jack was impressed by its interior, spacious, yet efficient, with systems far advanced beyond Alliance or hegemony technology. Most notable was a chamber clearly designed as living quarters for a child, complete with monitoring systems that interface directly with the ciphers. "It seems prepared for us," Dr. Voss observed. "The sanctuary anticipates needs," Narella explained, gently placing Kale in the specialized cradle. "It exists partially outside linear time." Jack took the pilot's position, finding the controls intuitive despite their alien design. "How do we leave? I don't see any exit large enough for a ship this size." Narella joined him at the command console. "The sanctuary creates the path when needed." She placed her hand on a crystal interface, and the ship responded immediately, systems activating with a soft hum. "Think of your destination clearly. The ship will interpret." Jack focused his thoughts on the Andromeda Gate Research Colonia frontier outpost he'd visited once, years ago, during his smuggling days. The ship's systems seemed to extract the memory directly from his mind, coordinates appearing on holographic displays. "Fascinating," Dr. Voss murmured, watching the process. "A direct neural interface." "Ready?" Narella asked, her hand still on the crystal. Jack looked back at their son, sleeping peacefully in his specialized cradle, then at Dr. Voss, who nodded her readiness. "Let's go." The ship lifted silently from its platform, hovering in the center of the hangar bay. Ahead, what had appeared to be a solid wall began to shimmer and part, revealing not the void of space, but a swirling tunnel of blue energy, a pathway through dimensions, rather than physical space. "The Nexus current," Narella explained. "It will carry us directly to our destination, bypassing normal space entirely." The ship moved forward, entering the energy tunnel. Unlike the violent translocation they had experienced in the shuttle, this transition was smooth and controlled. The sanctuary disappeared behind them as they accelerated along the current, surrounded by shifting patterns of light and energy. "How long until we reach the colony?" Jack asked, monitoring the unfamiliar but surprisingly comprehensible instrument readings. "Time works differently in the current," Narella replied, "but in terms you would understand, hours rather than weeks." Dr. Voss had already begun setting up a makeshift medical monitoring station near Kale's cradle. "I'll keep watch over the child. You two should rest while you can. Once we reach the colony, we'll need to establish contacts and security quickly." Jack nodded, but found himself reluctant to leave the control room. After everything they'd experienced, the quiet moment of transit felt almost surreal, a pause between crises where the full weight of what had happened could finally settle on his shoulders. A child, a son, not just any son, but a being of unprecedented significance to the galaxy. And Jack, a former smuggler, deserter, and professional rule-breaker, was now responsible for his safety and upbringing. Narella seemed to sense his thoughts. "You're afraid," she observed without judgment. "Terrified," Jack admitted. "I never planned on being a father, especially not to a child who's part Azuran, part human, and part ancient technology. If it helps, I never planned on being a mother," Narella replied with a small smile. "Particularly not with a human smuggler I was initially sent to eliminate." Jack raised an eyebrow. "Eliminate? My original mission was to retrieve the cipher by any means necessary," she explained. "If that meant removing obstacles permanently, so be it." "What changed?" Narella's expression softened. "You did. When you intervened with the Krell, risking your own safety for a stranger, it complicated things." Jack laughed softly. "So that's why you didn't shoot me in the docking bay when you had the chance." "I said any last words, and you replied safety's on," she recalled. "It was clever, unexpected. It made me curious." "Good thing I didn't go with my second choice of last words. Then, which was?" "I'm too pretty to die," Jack admitted with a self-deprecating grin. Narella laughed, a sound Jack had heard too rarely during their adventure. It transformed her features, making her look younger, lighter. "I might have shot you for that one," she teased. The moment of levity faded as they both glanced back toward the cabin where their son slept under Dr. Voss's watchful eye. "What kind of life can we give him?" Jack asked soberly. "Always running? Always hiding from those who would use him for their own purposes?" Narella considered this. "Not hiding," she decided. "Guardians don't hide. They watch, they guide, they protect. Kale will grow up understanding his purpose, with both of us to teach him different perspectives. Your resourcefulness, my discipline, your humanity, my Azuran heritage. And a ship full of ancient tech is his playground," Jack added with a wry smile. "There are worse childhoods," Narella pointed out. "Many Guardians are raised in isolation, knowing only their duty. Kale will have something they didn't, parents who care for him as a child first, a Guardian second." Jack found comfort in her words, in the quiet determination that had drawn him to her from the beginning. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, an unlikely family forged in extraordinary circumstances. As if sensing his thoughts, Narella reached across the control console and took his hand. Her skin was warm now, the blue glow beneath it pulsing gently in time with her heartbeat. "Rest," she suggested again. "I'll watch over our course." This time, Jack nodded and rose from his seat. Before leaving, he hesitated, then leaned down and placed a gentle kiss on Narella's forehead. "Wake me if anything changes." "I will," she promised. Jack made his way to the living quarters, pausing to check on Kale. The infant slept peacefully, his skin shifting between states, sometimes solid flesh, sometimes translucent crystal, revealing the complex energy patterns within. Dr. Voss nodded reassuringly, her monitoring devices showing stable readings. Finding a sleeping berth nearby, Jack settled in, exhaustion finally overtaking him. As he drifted toward sleep, his last thoughts were not of danger or uncertainty, but of the strange new path that had opened before him. A path he never could have imagined when he'd accepted that smuggling job back at the Cosmic Drift. He had set out to deliver a package. Instead, he'd found a family. The journey through the Nexus current passed without incident, the ship's advanced systems guiding them effortlessly along the interdimensional pathway. Jack woke to Dr. Voss's gentle shaking, informing him they were approaching their destination. In the control room, Narella sat with Kale in her arms, the infant awake and alert, making those musical sounds that seemed to interface directly with the ship's systems. As Jack entered, both turned to look at him, silver galactic eyes, tracking his movement with an awareness that was uncanny in one so young. "He's responsive to both of us," Narella explained, noticing Jack's surprise. "The Guardian bond recognizes parentage." Jack approached cautiously, still adjusting to his role. "May I?" Norella transferred Kale to his arms with practiced ease, as if they had been sharing parenting duties for years rather than hours. The child was surprisingly light, his body temperature fluctuating slightly as his form shifted between states. As Jack held him, Kale reached up with a tiny hand, touching his father's face with curious fingers. A flash of sensation passed between them. Exactly telepathy, but a sharing of emotional impressions. Recognition, safety, connection. "He knows me," Jack whispered, awed. "Of course," Norella replied. "Just as he knows me." The Cipher technology facilitates recognition at levels beyond normal consciousness. The ship's systems chimed softly, indicating their approach to normal space. Through the viewports, the blue energy tunnel began to thin, revealing stars beyond. "We're arriving at the Andromeda Gate colony," Norella announced, returning to the controls. "Preparing for transition to normal space?" Jack reluctantly handed Kale back to Dr. Voss, who had established herself as both medical monitor and impromptu caretaker. He joined Norella at the command console, watching as she navigated the complex process of dimensional transition. "Will they detect us?" he asked. "Not immediately," she replied. "The ship's natural state is undetectable to conventional sensors. We'll appear once I engage the integration protocols." The blue energy tunnel dissipated completely, and they emerged into normal space several thousand kilometers from the Andromeda Gatea, massive artificial structure orbiting a dwarf star at the edge of the galaxy. Nearby, the research colony was visible as a cluster of interconnected habitats and laboratories, their lights forming a small island of civilization in the cosmic void. "Beautiful," Dr. Voss murmured, gazing at her former home. "It's been years since I was last here." Norella activated the ship's integration systems, causing it to shift from its naturally undetectable state to one that would register on colonial sensors as a standard research vessel. "Transmitting approach codes now." After a brief delay, a response came through. "Unidentified vessel. This is Andromeda Gate Colony Control. Your ship configuration is not in our database. Please identify yourself and state your purpose." Jack leaned toward the communication array. "Colony Control. This is Jack Evans aboard the... What are we calling this ship?" "Nexus Dawn," Norella supplied. "Aboard the Nexus Dawn," Jack continued. "We're carrying Dr. Alara Voss, returning to resume research. Request permission to dock." Another pause. Then, "Dr. Voss? One moment, please." They waited tensely until a new voice came over the communication system older. Male, with a note of pleased surprise. "Alara, is that really you?" Dr. Voss moved closer to the array. "Hello, Nathaniel. Yes, it's me. I find myself in need of your discreet assistance." Of course. Whatever you need. I'll authorize your docking personally. Bay 7, Eastern Research Quadrant. It's more private there." "Thank you, Nathaniel. We'll explain everything upon arrival." The communication ended, and Dr. Voss noticed Jack and Norella's questioning looks. "Dr. Nathaniel Sarek, an old colleague and friend. He oversees xenobiology research here and, more importantly, he's trustworthy." "Let's hope so," Jack replied, guiding the ship toward the designated bay. "Because what we're about to tell him will test the limits of scientific acceptance." The docking process went smoothly, the Nexus Dawn systems adapting seamlessly to the colony's standard protocols. As the airlock cycled, Jack and Norella prepared themselves and Kale for their first public appearance as a family. "We need a cover story," Jack suggested. "At least initially. Something to explain our presence without revealing everything immediately." "Research expedition returning with unique findings," Dr. Voss offered. "Close enough to truth without specifics." Norella adjusted her clothing to better conceal the fading blue glow beneath her skin. The transformation had stabilized since Kale's birth, but traces remained visible evidence of her connection to the cipher technology. "And Cale?" she asked, cradling their son against her chest. "My nephew," Jack decided, "being transported to the colony for specialized medical care." Again, partial truth. The airlock completed its cycle, and the door slid open, revealing a tall, distinguished man with silver hair and intelligent eyes. Dr. Nathaniel Sarek's expression shifted from welcoming to astonishment as he took in the unusual group, particularly Norella's Azuran appearance and the child in her arms. "Alara," he greeted Dr. Voss warmly, despite his obvious curiosity. "You always did know how to make an entrance." "Nathaniel," she replied with genuine affection. "Thank you for your discretion. May we continue this conversation somewhere more private?" He nodded, leading them from the docking bay through a series of corridors specifically designed for staff, rather than visitors. "My private laboratory. No surveillance. No interruptions." As they walked, Jack noted the colony's atmosphere, a blend of scientific focus and frontier independence. Researchers of various species moved purposefully through the halls, while viewports showed the magnificent Andromeda Gate, in the distance, humanity's greatest achievement in space exploration, a constructed wormhole leading to the neighboring galaxy. Dr. Sarek's laboratory was spacious and well-equipped, with separate areas for various disciplines of study. He secured the door behind them, then turned with undisguised curiosity. "Now, Alara, perhaps you'd like to introduce your companions and explain why you've arrived in a ship of completely unknown configuration after disappearing from Cygnus Outpost during what I hear was quite the dramatic confrontation between Vanguard and Hegemony forces." Dr. Voss smiled. "News travels fast. Faster when the confrontation destroys half a research facility," Sarek replied dryly. "The official story claims terrorist action, but rumors suggest something far more interesting was at stake." She performed the introductions. Jack Evans, former Alliance pilot turned independent contractor. Norella, Azuran Guardian. "And the child is Cale, their son, and the reason we're here." Sarek's scientific discipline prevented him from showing shock, but his eyebrows rose significantly. "A human Azuran hybrid? That's genetically improbable, to say the least." "Not just improbable," Dr. Voss agreed. "Impossible without the intervention of cipher technology." And so they explained the stolen artifact, the chase across the galaxy, the transformation, the sanctuary, and finally, the birth of a child who represented not just two species, but a bridge to ancient technology beyond current understanding. Throughout the explanation, Sarek listened with increasing fascination, occasionally asking clarifying questions, but never expressing disbelief. When they finished, he sat in thoughtful silence for several moments. "In 40 years of xenobiological research," he finally said, "I've encountered many wonders, but this." He gestured toward Cale, who watched him with those uncanny silver eyes. "This transcends conventional science. It's extraordinary. And dangerous knowledge," Jack pointed out. "The Vanguard, the Hegemony, the consortium, they'd all kill to possess what we're telling you." Sarek nodded soberly. "Indeed. Which is why security must be our first priority." He turned to Dr. Voss. "The Independent Research Quadrant has private living quarters adjacent to secure laboratories. I can arrange authorization under my personal oversight. Limited access, minimal documentation." "That would be ideal," she agreed. "And your ship?" he asked. "It's unusual enough to attract attention. It can remain undetectable when needed," Norella explained, "though will require periodic access." Sarek accepted this with a scientist's adaptability. "I'll arrange discreet transportation to the residential quadrant now. The fewer eyes on you initially, the better." As he made the necessary arrangements, Jack moved to the laboratory's viewport, gazing out at the Andromeda Gate in the distance. The massive structure represented humanity's greatest achievement in space, exploration, constructed wormhole connecting to the neighboring galaxy. Ironic that their sun represented an even more advanced method of interstellar travel, one that might someday make such gates obsolete. Norella joined him, Kale still in her arms. "Having second thoughts?" she asked quietly. Jack shook his head. "Just contemplating how quickly life can change. A week ago, I was a smuggler with a ship and a job. Now I'm a father, responsible for a child who might reshape the future of interspecies relations and technological development." "Frightened?" "Terrified," he admitted with a small smile. "But also, I don't know. There's something right about it. Like maybe this is what I was always heading toward. Even when I was running in the opposite direction." Norella's expression softened. "The Azuran believe that destiny finds us, regardless of the path we choose." "And what about you?" Jack asked. "Guardian training probably didn't include raising a hybrid child with a human smuggler in the curriculum." "Guardians adapt," she replied simply. Then, with unusual vulnerability. "Though I admit, the maternal aspects are unfamiliar territory." Jack surprised himself by reaching out to take her hand. "Then we'll navigate it together, make the rules up as we go." Her fingers intertwined with his, a silent agreement forming between them. Whatever the future held, danger, discovery, wonder, or challenge, they would face it as a unit, bound by the extraordinary child they had created. Dr. Sarek returned, transport arrangements complete. "All set. A private shuttle will take you to the residential quarters. Ilara and I will establish research protocols to monitor Kale's development without raising suspicions." As they prepared to leave, Jack felt a strange sense of possibility replacing his earlier apprehension. The colony represented a new beginning, not perfect safety, perhaps, but a place where they could pause, plan, and perhaps even build something resembling a normal life for their extraordinary son. The private shuttle carried them through the colony's various sectors: research, residential, commercial, agricultural, revealing a self-contained world on the edge of known space. Their new quarters occupied the top level of a residential tower in the independent research section, offering privacy, security, and a breathtaking view of both the colony and the distant Andromeda Gate. As Jack stood on the balcony that evening, watching distant ships approach the massive gate structure, he felt, rather than heard, Norella join him. Kale was finally sleeping after a feeding session involving a specially formulated nutrient solution that Dr. Voss had developed to support his unique physiology. "Dr. Sarek believes we can remain here safely for at least a few months," Norella reported. "Long enough to establish Kale's developmental patterns and basic needs." "And then?" Jack asked. "And then we assess," she replied pragmatically. "The sanctuary provided the ship for a reason. Guardian work rarely involves staying in one place for long." Jack nodded, understanding that their safety, and the galaxy's might, depend on remaining mobile, one step ahead of those who would exploit their son's unique nature. "You know," he said after a comfortable silence, "when I was in that bar and saw you cornered by the Krell, I never imagined where helping you would lead." "Do you regret it?" Jack thought about the question seriously, weighing the danger and uncertainty against what they had discovered together. "No," he decided. "Some journeys are worth the risk." Norella smiled, that rare, transformative expression that Jack had come to treasure. In Azuran tradition, there's a saying, "The finger on the trigger may end a life, but the safety engaged may begin one." "Poetic," Jack commented. "Is that really an Azuran saying?" "I just made it up," she admitted, with uncharacteristic playfulness. "But it should be." Jack laughed, the sound carrying across the balcony into the vast expanse beyond. Below them, the colony continued its rhythms of research and discovery. Above, stars glittered with possibility. And in the room behind them, their son slept, a miracle of circumstance, biology, and ancient technology. A new family, Born from a moment when a smuggler decided to help a stranger, and a guardian chose not to pull the trigger. "Safety's on," Jack murmured, the phrase that had started everything. Norella leaned against him, her head resting on his shoulder as they gazed outward together. "And a new journey begins,"